Hello, I'm Janet Neal, and welcome to Superbwoman Sundays at 7. I'm so glad that you've joined us tonight. We have, of course, another amazing superb woman as my guest, Carolyn Braddock of the Braddock Body Process method. I am just so excited to have her with us, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. But first of all, for those of you who are new and don't know anything about the Superbwoman, let me take a minute and tell you. I started the Superbwoman about a year and a half ago with the belief that the world is a mess and that women can make a difference. And on top of that, there are so many of us that do not realize we have any power at all, or we're giving our power away. So that's what the Superbwoman is all about, helping women to understand that they are very powerful beings that can help change this world. And I define a superb woman as a woman who has taken the time to understand who she is. It's all about the be. It's not about what you're doing. It's about being first, and that's where the power is. It's taking that time to step back, to understand your values, your strengths, your passions, anything that really makes up you, and then crafting and living a life as a result that encompasses all of that and utilizes all of that. And when you do that, let me tell you, you are a powerful person, and you put positive energy into the universe. And I don't know about you, but I think we all kind of need that. So I have been blessed to meet all these amazing, superb women on my path, and I wanted them to have the opportunity to share their stories, because they're really amazing stories. It's not that what they're doing that's so amazing, it's how they got there. It's about how they learned to listen to who they are and to follow their passions, to follow their path, to find their path. And as a result, they're doing very powerful things and putting great energy back into the world. And our guest tonight, Carolyn Braddock, is no exception to that. Carolyn and I met about 2 years ago at the Women at Woodstock retreat. Now, I've talked about that before. For more information, go to womenatwoodstock.com. It's a wonderful retreat for women over 50. And we were both presenters. I had just literally, probably the hour before I met her, I had been in my hotel room and I had been drafting my business plan for the Superbwoman. I had this whole idea of what a superb woman was, and I walk into this room and there's this woman with this very powerful energy who is clearly comfortable in her own skin, and I thought, whoa, superb woman. It's like, there she was. And I have to say I was a little intimidated, and I realized that whenever I feel intimidated by someone, I have to look at what that means for me. And what that meant for me is it kind of triggered that Marianne Williamson quote that says, it's not our darkness that we fear, but our light. And who are you to play small? That the world needs you to play big. And I thought, boy, there's a woman who knows how to do it. I want to be more like her. And so I have fashioned my life on the examples of Carolyn and so many others who have shown me the way to be able to play big in this world, to be able to let my light shine. And I encourage you all to do the same. So now, without any further ado, let's meet that woman that I was so impressed by, Carolyn Braddock. Carolyn, welcome to the show tonight.
Thanks a lot, Janet. And I'm really excited to be here and to connect with you again, too.
Excellent. So Carolyn and I were talking a couple days ago about where she came from and where she is today. And Carolyn started off, was on a career path in the tennis industry to play and to teach and to coach. And then somehow things changed. And now she's doing all sorts of work, this wonderful healing work to help people to deal with their stress and trauma through body movement. So Carolyn, how did you get from this path of being in the tennis world to where you are today?
Well, Janet, I actually started out in 8th grade with, I would call with my knees, without my knees, and then gradually embodying my knees, as I have 2 metal knee joints right now. But when I was in 8th grade, I had a disease in my knees, which meant that I needed to have casts on my legs, and I didn't go to school. I had a tutor who came in. And in the afternoons, my friends would come and we would play basketball back and forth. And I was laying in bed and I would just shoot, and they would pretend. And that's the connection I made with my friends, because I couldn't move. I couldn't do much of anything. Because in those days, they said, just rest your legs, don't do anything. In this day and age, of course, they do it differently with a lot of physical therapy. But the other thing is, then I gradually became frustrated because I couldn't do much. And then I realized that I was carrying a big load in the I can'ts. I can't do this, I can't do that. And so as I moved along and went to college, then I realized some more things were coming up. And that was about, instead of going away from the pain, to go in the pain and find out, what's going on? What do my legs want to tell me? In essence, the thing about my work, the base of my work is about using breath, sound, and Tai Chi and Qigong movement. Let me give you another example. Yesterday, I had the most incredible day teaching at Cal State Northridge in the music therapy department, training music therapists how to be better therapists, how to be more present, how to work with clients, and how to breathe, how to use their sound. They know how to use music, but also including some movement with the music. I had the most incredible time with the most incredible people. A lot of fun. So then I started using music. I started using Tai Chi movement. I started using my way of connecting the movement to what I was doing in the healing of my legs, and realizing that I could actually get breath down into my legs. I could do movement. Maybe I couldn't do movement like running on the beach or something like that, or playing intense tennis anymore, but what I could do is swim. I could play tennis. I could help people. I could do workshops and have fun and smile and do all of these things. So there was a lot of what I could do when I put down the backpack of what I couldn't do.
Wow. So that's great. So that was a transformation on many different levels. And this was, when you said this was like in college where you came to this realization?
I began to do it in college, and then after graduating, it became more intensified that this was my path now. It was about finding ways to be in my body, not away from it, to be in my breath, not away from it, to embody those things that could help me to be more fluid, which made me stronger, to laugh more, to have more joy.
That sounds lovely. How did you discover Tai Chi and Qigong?
Actually, a friend of mine told me about it in the early 1970s. And there was another piece there because I went to some trainings in Tai Chi and Qigong and learned and was frustrated because I couldn't do a lot of the moves because my knees would react in a way that I wanted them to. In other words, forcing them to. And then I realized something really cool, and that was that I could do a lot of the moves that I couldn't do by being in a chair and using my pelvis to do the movements, and still doing the most incredible movements softer, more gentle, more fluid, but more fluid because I wasn't struggling to try and do it a certain way or to have to do it a certain way, but rather to be out there and to use my movements in a way I could relax. And so I actually had a lot of my teacher friends, my Tai Chi teacher friends, try it that way. And what they realized is that a lot of their clients and their people that they were teaching could do it that way as well too, and come to some really incredible realizations about fluidity, which is the basis of Tai Chi. The slow, it's often called stillness and motion, motion and stillness. And so that began the way. And the other thing were very specific Qigong movements that I could bring through my body, bring through my organs to help me to come back to balance and to help me to be able to increase my breath and I think increase my joy in life.
Excellent. So you used all this, Tai Chi and Qigong in the movement to help yourself. Now, how did that translate over? Because I know you've done a lot of work with women who have been sexually abused, who've gone through some kinds of trauma. How did you get into that line of work?
Well, in college, I was working with some junior high school students, running some programs for junior high school students and high school students, and I started to realize, and these programs were just to help at-risk children, at-risk youth, and to help them to be more balanced, more centered, and to help them through ways of doing life other than, fighting their way through life. So interestingly, I learned more about using Tai Chi, Qigong, the movement, and breath, and basically from the sports standpoint, throwing balls, doing some tennis, and playing golf, which is my passion. So helping them. And I realized as I was doing that I kept noticing that they had certain patterns, like a lot of them who had been sexually traumatized or emotionally traumatized had different patterns that I discovered over the years. One was rigid, where one was collapsed and one was inanimate. And with each of those, what I call body types, there came with them distinctive patterns of breath, sound, and movement. And so I started looking at that possibility and seeing that there were just ways that people were embodying trauma. And then I thought, okay, well, what about if I could help them move through it using Tai Chi and Qigong as a base to help unwind that and give people something to do that would keep them balanced right off the bat, to help them to increase space and breath in their bodies, because then they could begin to heal. Then they could begin to see that they could be strong, that they could do some things, and that they could use their movement to essentially move into that space of breath and use their voice. Our cells have to catch up. And sometimes when we try to have a voice, we don't. And so having a voice that is what I call in my book body voices is that nonverbal voice, that voice that may be a repetitive pattern of breath, sound, or movement, or even a repetitive motion in the way that someone walks. Someone walking a tightrope walk, or for instance, someone that holds their breath, because they can't quite get that voice to come out. So through writing and through song and through music, and I'm thinking back right now to the workshop that I did yesterday, and it was just so powerful to have people just all of a sudden pick up an instrument and begin to use that instrument as a way to unwind. So that's how I began that, beginning to see the movement. It started out with a sports background, but then it encompassed more of the fluidity in Tai Chi, Qigong, golf, still using tennis, and swimming. Swimming is great, by the way. When you want to release anger, swimming is terrific.
Good to know. So I love what you're saying, because you're using some great examples that I think other people can use in their lives, which means being very aware of what's going on around you. So you started off with identifying your passions and doing the things that were important to you, but in doing that, you were aware of what else was opening up around you, and then learn to incorporate that into your life to actually enrich it and to make your path a little bit more powerful. It's a great example.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. So tell me more about the Braddock Body Process. Am I saying that correct?
Absolutely, it's a lot in one mouthful, but basically, this process is about connecting the nonverbal with the verbal. You see, in the field of trauma, and right now there's so much of the world in trauma, and we're in trauma in so many different ways, and it can be relationships or just everyday kinds of stress, and stress is huge. But when you look at the connection between what is the nonverbal, like when you're walking and all of a sudden you think about something that's bothering you, what happens to your body? Do you hold your breath? That's the connection that I look for. I look for the connection between the nonverbal and the verbal, and the ways that that manifests in the emotional body, the sexual body, the relational body, the spiritual body, basically in body, mind, and spirit. And I look for the way that that's manifesting. And and so then what I do is help people to make more space for it to unwind. And that's why I like Tai Chi and Qigong, because it helps you to slowly move that through, to let the cells catch up, and to then begin to see that you can be balanced. You know, how many people we deal with trauma, we deal with stress, but we're off balance when we do it. Or we get up from a seated position and then all of a sudden we start walking, but we're not even balanced by the time we stand up.
Mm.
So, that's something that I think is important. And then the relaxation techniques. So when we start to feel a lot of stress, well, what can we do to help relax? What are some ways that we can relax? Are you in touch with your body? Do you know when you breathe? Where does it get stuck? How do you walk? When you don't breathe, what's the connection between when you don't breathe and when you do breathe? What happens with that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of awareness, because I think people, I was just thinking about when you were saying that, and it made me be aware of my breath, like, how am I breathing right now? Because I think we take that for granted and we don't even think about it. But you're right, there's times when we're very shallow breathing, and then there's the deeper, relaxing breath.
Well, and then another thing that I use a lot is when you're trying to make a decision on something, rather than staying in that what I call backed up against the wall, sometimes when you have to make a decision, step back 3 steps, take 3 deep breaths, and then decide, okay, maybe I'll go this way or that way or whatever. But allow that space and time to simply breathe. And the easiest way to do that is take 3 steps back.
Literally
And
take 3 steps
feel
back?
like gigantic steps, but it can be, just step back a little bit to give you space to decide, to let yourself breathe, and that's one of the easiest ways to make a decision.
Excellent, excellent. So, Carolyn, like I said in the beginning, you're a woman who strikes me as someone who's very comfortable in her own skin. I don't know when you got to that point in your life. Maybe you could share that with us. But how did you get to be to the place where you are?
Actually, it kind of happened pretty fast, and I think at one point I kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing my way through life, when in reality, if I would just step back and pull a little bit, might be different, as they say in some of the jokes about pushing and pulling. But I decided that what I wasn't going to do is keep pushing, because it wasn't getting me anywhere. It was making me angry, it was making me sad, it was making me more fearful, which I had a lot of fear when I was growing up, a fear that I wouldn't be able to move. When I was told in 8th grade that I would be in a wheelchair by the time I was 21, I decided that's not going to happen. And so I began pushing, but then there was a realization, and I credit it to many of my mentors over the years, but also the Tai Chi and Qigong and sports, because through sports, it's like when you hold a golf club, if you hold it too tight, then the ball goes all over the place.
Mm.
But if you loosen your grip, then the ball goes straight down the fairway. And that's so much fun. And there is the metaphor of life. And the same thing with swimming. If you swim too hard, you get exhausted, your body hurts. But if you get into the flow, then something different can happen. So one day I was in my car, and all of a sudden, just like boom, I don't know where it went, but all of a sudden I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel angry. I just felt relaxed. And that was an unusual state to be. And it was like I didn't worry. I didn't have to worry about what the next thing was, although that's not that I never worry or have fear, but it just, all of a sudden I just realized I don't have to have that. I don't have to keep pushing.
Right.
That maybe
That was your choice.
I could sit back and relax, as in the golf game.
Fabulous. Oh, that's a great metaphor. I like that a lot. So you
Well, me too.
mentioned,
Passion is golf.
yeah. um, so you mentioned your mentors. Who has helped you on your path?
Well, one person in particular, Carl Whitaker, they call him the father of family therapy many times. And he told me once, because I did all the workshops I could to study with him, to learn from that man. And what he said is the family is like a baseball team. And he said, and if one person doesn't play right on the team, then you need to work with a whole team. And he also said to me, he said, if you don't learn something from every single client that you have, then you're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are you learning from this client, this what I consider to be a very sacred being? And I'm allowed to be in them in a very sacred place of healing. And to me, that's a real honor. That's a tremendous honor to be able to do that. And so Carl has been a big person in my life. And of course, my Tai Chi master, Sheng Liang, Al Huang, and many other people, Aston Patterning Bodywork, other forms of bodywork, and my husband of 45 years. And he provides for me a perspective when I can't see it, when I can't see the path. He'll just simply go, oh, have you considered this? I'm like, whoa, yeah, oh, good idea. And it's so simple. So, so those people in the fields of body work and then a mentor that I had who my book is dedicated to.
Lovely. And I see your book behind you, Body Voices.
Correct. That was published in 1994 and also 1996. And at some point, I might do a video with that. But for right now, I'm busy doing some other things. And I would say discovering other things.
Excellent. Excellent. So I just want to remind the viewers out there, if you have any questions, that you can go ahead and type those in, and we'll ask them of Carolyn. But let me ask you another question in the meantime. So I talk about the superb woman being a woman who lets go of shoulds in her life. So what's one should that you have released?
Well, growing up, I had a lot of shoulds, have tos, musts, and up until actually a few years ago, maybe a few meaning like maybe 10 or 12 years ago, there were still quite a bit of shoulds. I should do this. I should see this many people or do all these things and fly all over the country, which I used to do. And now I consider that to be what we call shoulds, musts, have tos, or masturbation is what I call it sometimes. And so I realized, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. And the needs or the wants, there's a difference. So what do I want to do? So the shoulds, it was a lot of it was running across the country teaching workshops and things. And then one day, this flight attendant said I was going to the East Coast, and she knew me going to the West Coast a lot. And she said, Carolyn, aren't you going the wrong direction?
Wow.
And I went, wow. And I thought about that. And I thought, she's right. So then I sat down and said, what do I want to do, and how do I want to do that so I can take a breath and not be going and going and going all the time. So that was a big, big change in terms of the shoulds.
Excellent. I love that. I love that. But it also is, again, to the point of being aware and paying attention. So that's great. Wonderful.
Paying attention is really something that when you do that, it gives you a breath. If you just stop for a moment, take a breath. I can call it the California or the Colorado breathing diet because I live in both places. And that's taking a breath between sentences or taking a breath between bites of food. It just gives you that little bit of that, or taking a breath in, and as you breathe in, at the top of your breath in, just pause that slight bit before you exhale. And that gives you that moment of, that joy, that feeling of, wow, I can take a breath all the way out.
Hmm. I love that. So we've just got a couple minutes left here. So Carolyn, tell us what's next. What's coming up on the horizon for you?
Well, in about 4 weeks ago, I turned 68. So I started to look at what do I really want to do. And I realized that I am having the time of my life. I love what I do. And I love being able to create in a way that is much different than I've ever done before. And that's, I get people involved in my workshops. I get them involved in helping me to teach so that they can learn how to do that too.
Mhm.
So basically, I'm doing what I want to do in my next step of life. I'm inviting people to come in to teach and to be a part of the workshops. And yesterday was a clear example of everyone, every music therapist becoming involved in learning and teaching and having a good time. So that's it. I don't intend to retire. I don't even know what that word means. You can only play golf so many times per week. And I swim. I swim, and I go to Aqua Zumba in the pool, and people know that I do that, so they usually don't call me in the mornings because that's my time, to swim. So, and I play golf, and I work my schedule around that. So on the horizon, that's what it is. It's continuing with breath.
Excellent, excellent. And for those of you who are watching live, Carolyn, tell us how people can get a hold of you or find out more about your workshops that are coming up.
Well, you can look at my website, which is the www.braddockbodyprocess.com, and you can click on to all the things there, and also click underneath each picture, and you'll see many more pictures. And there's a video there also of Chi Rodriguez's Youth Academy, and you'll see me teaching the fourth graders there from a few years ago. And so you can do that, and you can also click down and scroll down to workshops, and you can see the ones I'm doing coming up May 2nd in Santa Monica, Finding Rest in the Midst of Stress, not inducing stress, but hopefully resolving it, and that's for UCLA Arts and Healing. And then my workshops here in Ojai, and that's the small group workshops, and there's a schedule of those. Lavender Festival time in June is the next one coming up. And then, of course, individual work or group work or whatever, whatever is good. Mentoring. I mentor quite a few people, especially music therapists, because I love that.
Excellent, excellent. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can just hold on, and at the end of this, there'll be a slide that tells you all the information Carolyn just said. So Carolyn, thank you again for being my guest. It's a delight to see you as usual, and I'm just so thrilled that you could be with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Janet, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Likewise. And please stay with us next week. My guest, you don't want to miss this one. Stephanie Fast is my guest. And just to give you a little preview of Stephanie, her story is unbelievable. She was abandoned as an orphan in Korea, was severely abused and neglected, and was found by a World Vision nurse and taken in and brought to an orphanage. And you can tell you herself what happened. Another amazing, superb woman. So thanks so much for joining us. Have just the most fabulous week, and we'll see you next week here on the Superb Woman, Sundays at 7. Have a great week.